All right, welcome everybody to our Forgotten Grapes Wine Club September virtual tasting. We are so excited to have Peter Stolpman, not Stoppelman, here, as we just talked about. Peter Stolpman is here with us from Stolpman Vineyards, historic, super fascinating, one of the more well-known, famous brands coming out of Santa Barbara, specifically the Ballard Canyon area. We're going to get into a deep dive about all things Stolpman, but also the Ballard Canyon region as well. Before we begin, just a couple of reminders. We're going to be recording this, so if for any reason you got to jump off, we'll be throwing out the virtual or the replay tomorrow via a link. And of course, we've got everybody muted. So if you've got any questions, comments, food pairings, of course, we always love those. Throw those into the chat, and I will be happy to throw those out and ask Peter any questions you've got. And if he's gracious enough, we've got a little bit of time at the end, we may have some time to unmute everybody, and you can talk to Peter yourselves. So with that in mind, we always start by asking our very special guest, Peter, what is the most memorable bottle of wine that you have ever opened?
Well, luckily you gave me that question a day in advance,
We
but it
always
would
give
have
the
been,
questions in advance. Yes.
regardless, it would have been an automatic answer. It was a Magnum of 1989 Jean-Louis Chave Hermitage Blanc.
Oh,
And it
beautiful.
was served at our engagement party in like the spring of 2013.
Yeah.
So it had Carry the One, 24 years of age,
Yeah.
and it was like amber golden in color. You would have thought it would be totally oxidized, but it was just like honey and coating and just so freaking delicious. I think there were 14 of us at dinner,
Oh my
and
gosh.
a Magnum wasn't enough. Back then, I had a short-lived like winery blog, and I wouldn't shut up about it on the blog. Like you wouldn't have known I was getting engaged because the entire blog post was about that Magnum. So my whole team for our wedding present went online, found auctions, and my team's wedding present to Jess and I was a second Magnum of
Wow.
1989 Jean-Michel Hermitage Blanc, and Jess and I opened it on our hotel room bed. Our black Labrador, Baron von Stolpman, had never been on a bed before, but we invited him up on the hotel
Oh
room bed. It
no.
was a dog-friendly hotel. And we'd gone down the street and gotten some caviar and Bellini. And on a nice sunny afternoon with the French doors open to the hotel room, Jess and I polished off that Magnum, the second Magnum, on our first wedding anniversary.
Oh,
And I've
you're
never
giving me, I was gonna say, you're giving me palpitations because I thought first time you ever invited the dog up on the bed, I was expecting a knockover and that bottle went spilling on the
Well,
bed.
what's really funny is then we went out for dinner and we're joking walking back the hotel room hallway, like, oh no, like Baron knows that was a one-time thing. He would never get on the bed again. Key card, open the door. He's just wagging his tail, laying on the bed. Hey, welcome
Oh
back.
yeah. Yeah. He's like, once it with a dog, once you let them do it once, that's their domain. It's the way it works.
Immediate new normal.
Nice. That's fantastic. So was that bottle, was that a gift to you guys, or how did you come about that first bottle?
Yeah, so our winemaker at the time, a guy named Sashi Morman, just an insane collector, and he wanted to throw the engagement party. He's like, Pete, invite, your best friends, the people in your bridal party, and then I got the wine. Nobody's bringing wine. I'm only opening magnums. With 14 people, it's a great chance to open, 8, 9 magnums
Yeah.
of aged wine. And I could kind of tell you a couple of the others. I think we had a Jacques Solo Seneschal to start with. That was baller. But yeah, it was an insane night.
Yeah, there's always one bottle that stands out and the rest kind of fade into the fog, but that sounds absolutely divine, and to then get a second bottle of it, that's truly special. So we're going to be starting off tonight with the Uni, the white, And just so you've got the order so you can follow along, we're going to be doing the Uni first, then the Vin Gris, the Gamay Trousseau rosé, and then we'll be doing the La Cuadrilla next, and then lastly we'll be doing the 2022 OG Syrah. But Peter, I know you've got some slides prepared for us to kind of take us through the Stolpman experience. So why don't you go ahead and launch that and take it away? I will hand the mic over to you.
Yeah, beautiful. I figure we might as well have some pretty pictures rather than just look at Chris and I, although we are very
I don't know.
handsome.
Yeah, we are. We're good looking men here.
You have a lot more hair than I do. But
They
yeah.
come for the wine, but they stay for the host.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place in the world. Hopefully, y'all have been to Santa Barbara wine country. That's the shot pretty much looking south, a little bit southwest at sunset, as the vineyard was going dormant one year. I love this map I had created, really showing the funnel. In hindsight, the guy I hired, he should have had the arrows going through the vineyard out to the Mojave. Santa Barbara is such a unique place to grow vinifera. We are the only unsheltered wine country on the West Coast, right? Back here, the San Rafaels, that used to be the coastline. Freak tectonic movement. The plate off of LA and San Diego rotated around, crunched our plate up. That's the mountain range we're looking at right there. So that's going east to west. So we're a giant funnel of the cold Arctic flow coming down from Alaska. Not only is that cold air trapped off of Point Conception, but then the crazy thing is that nobody ever talks about back here. We have the Sierra Nevadas terminating. If anybody lives in LA, if you've ever driven to Mammoth Mountain, you never drive over the Sierra Nevadas. You drive around the bottom of them, which differentiates Santa Barbara. Not only are we unsheltered, but if you go north to Paso Robles, Monterey, Sonoma, Mendocino, they're all sheltered from the macro continental convection of that hot desert to our east. We don't have that shelter. So all afternoon, once the Mojave back there heats up, that cold Arctic wind is getting funneled back out there to the desert. So not only are we really far south on the globe, but we're heavily moderated. We wake up early. We have a compact growing season, short winter, but it's really mild. People think Santa Barbara, you're Southern California. Say no. This mountain range is the border of Southern California to the south and the central coast to the north. But of course, Paso Robles, you're sheltered by the coastal range and every other region to our north. So we're way colder than Napa Valley, colder even than Carneros. And again, just a quick overview, we're the founding vineyard of Ballard Canyon, right there in the heart of Santa Barbara wine country. And yeah, thank God Dad found our land in 1988. He was able to buy it in 1990, and he started planting Syrah. We'll get to that when we get to the originals. Farming wise, we're certified both organic and biodynamic, which we're very proud of, taking care of our land. We also take care of our people, which we'll talk about with La Cuadrilla. I'm drinking the La Cuadrilla red blend. And then the vineyard map, we have 15 different varietals. And we'll really harp on this when we get into the reds, but all that red color is Syrah. So we're gonna have, of course, one Syrah. Half of our acreage is Syrah, and then we're gonna have a Syrah-based blend as well. But yeah, that actually is already woefully out of date. That's only a 6-year-old map, but we've planted a new again. But yeah, getting to the first run of the night, Uni. We originally made Uni for a sushi restaurant group called Uchi out of Austin, Texas. And the way this wine came about, talking about my once in a lifetime bottle, Jean-Louis Chave Hermitage Blanc, we chased that dragon with a wine we call L'Avion, the airplane. Our dare to be great varietal is Roussanne. It is a golden, rich elixir. It ages better than any of our reds. The 2008 right now is majestic. For the reds, I prefer like the 2012 and 13 right now. It's like optimal age. So I saw that Texas was special ordering this high-end golden Roussanne. And I said, huh, okay, that's interesting. Out of all the countries and states that would be special ordering this high-end wine, it usually goes to California, New York, and Northern Europe. Did not guess that Texas would be ordering it. And then a month later, I happened to glance at our depletion report and I saw that Uchi was buying it. They had special ordered it. And I texted my brand manager. I said, congratulations. I'd read about Uchi. They were making national waves, great publicity. They were basically the Nobu of the middle of the country at the time. And I said, hey, congrats to the marquee placement. You know, that's awesome. Well, he immediately calls me. And for my generation, that's a real escalation in mode of communication. You don't, you don't pick up the phone and call based on a text. You text back. So, so I picked up the phone and he said, Pete, if any of your friends show up to Uchi, they're not going to find La Viona on the wine list. The head chef and the wine director at the time, they were in Austin, Houston, Dallas, Denver at that point. If you show up to any of the Uchis, you won't find your wine. The head chef and the wine director collect it. They admire it. They think it's singular and unique, but it's too rich and intense for their delicate raw fish. But yeah, just so you know, I'm like, okay, well, even in that high-end wine, we add just a touch of Chardonnay, usually about 7% Chardonnay, just to elevate the finish. And I said, we have 3.5 acres of Chardonnay expressly for that purpose. We could make Uchi a lighter, more delicate blend by adding more Chardonnay. The next thing I know, those two gentlemen, the head chef and the beverage director, are on a flight out to Santa Barbara to blend their wine. And the first year was 2016. We were still fixated on the Roussanne. So it's like 70% Roussanne, 30% Chardonnay. That blending meeting, we actually messed around with stirring the leaves in the bottle of the big punch in the bottom of the big oak puncheons, and they loved it a little bit cloudy because it paralleled their wine and sake menu. So lining up on the same line, wine list, sake list, the cloudy Roussanne Chardonnay blend mirrored the Nigori style sake. So it's the Nigori style wine. Over time, we backed off from making it cloudy. We just feel like the wine is already rich and opulent enough. We don't need more texture from the misty sediment in it. And then what happened? COVID. They were not doing $500 omakase on the sidewalk. And so I shot them an email and said, hey, all this wine that I bottled for you, are you okay opening it up to the broader market? And they said, oh, thank God you're willing to do that. We thought we had to buy all of it and we're closed right now. So don't worry about it. A lot of people have heard about the wine. Psalm TV actually co-promoted it with a movie they called Delicacy, heavily featuring Stephanie Fish, an uni diver here in Santa Barbara. She actually adopted our uni drawing for her logo. So if you ever see the Stephanie Fish logo, it's the same merchant drawing that my friend Eric did for us. Of course, we had to name it uni because when the sushi chef thought about Santa Barbara, his mind immediately went to Santa Barbara urchin. Before Stephanie, all of her urchin did a round trip flight to the Tokyo fish market, was sold. So if you're eating uni in a Santa Barbara sushi restaurant, it had taken a round trip flight to Tokyo. Stephanie began to sell live urchin to all the local restaurants. So the idea of this wine is that the early pick Chardonnay makes the Roussanne more delicate. So like a great piece of urchin, the flavor is like a sweet, delicate ocean flavor, but then the texture in the mouth is just coating. If you don't like it, you would call it slimy. If you love it, it's just coating and decadent. And that comes from the Roussanne. And then over time, the cepage has actually flip-flopped. So today it's 60% Chardonnay, 40% Roussanne. So Roussanne is the last varietal to be harvested after all of the reds, and Roussanne comes from the ancient French root rousse, the color of rust. So Kyle, our head winemaker there, is looking at grapes harvested for uni. They're the uneven rust-colored grapes. We had already cherry-picked the evenly tanned fruit for the high-end white tête de cuvée, the Lavion, and still really coating, intense texture, and then married with that more delicate Chardonnay. So I think of it as a richer version of Chardonnay. And there's a good look at the picks. That was from a couple of years ago. I believe that pick was the morning of Halloween, where we were debating waiting a couple days, but like, you know what? Let's harvest now and let the crew trick or treat with their kids. So we finished Halloween morning back in 2023. But you can see just how dark and golden those clusters are.
Yeah, and 23, of course, was a fantastic year all around, just a good balance between rain, a real cool growing period, and then, a very late harvest. So I imagine even for Roussanne, that was some of the latest that you guys have probably ever picked there.
Yeah, we're not shy about letting it hang into November. And it's actually the best varietal to prosper during a heat wave vintage. Of course, 2023, we're thrilled not to have a heat wave, but usually when we get our heat waves so early, it doesn't really affect the Roussanne other than getting a tan earlier. What we have to do with the Roussanne to get the even Rousse is we pull leaves away from the fruit. It's the only varietal out of all 15 on the vineyard where we want the full brunt of our 34-degree latitude equatorial sun. We have to shade every red varietal. And then once the exterior of the cluster tans, we actually hand rotate every bunch. An hour on the stomach, hour on the back. Nobody else in the world does this. Like the only noble Roussanne from France is Chateau Beaucastel, Châteauneuf Blanc. They have 20 people on the sorting line picking out the golden tan grapes. And that's how they make their high-end Roussanne. We do that in the vineyard. And charge about for uni got like 1/8 of the price of the Beaucastel Vin Blanc.
I was gonna say, to find those Chateauneuf du Pape Blancs in the United States, it's becoming rarer and rarer, it feels like. And even some of the like Chateau Gris and the great Marsanne Roussanne blends from the Northern Rhone are hard to find here. They do not get out here very often.
Well, and going back to the wine of my life, the '89 Magnum of Chave Hermitage Blanc, they have to have Marsanne planted in Hermitage because they can never get the Roussanne ripe enough. And famously, Jean-Louis Chave says he only knows the approximate blend of that wine during very hot years when the Roussanne will turn a little bit gold. And they can actually cluster count and figure out the cepage of Roussanne versus Marsanne. But in Ballard Canyon with our full-time crew that can baby the Roussanne to ripeness, the fact that we're arid, we don't get rain even when it's forecasted like today, we can let the Roussanne hang and even into November if we have to.
That's amazing. Now, you mentioned you're picking the Chardonnay early. How early, what Brix level are you picking that at? It sounds like you're really kind of looking for more of the acid base to counteract that real rich, oily Roussanne that you're blending into it.
Yeah, so we're basically trying to forecast at this point just how rich and opulent the Roussanne is going to be. In a heat wave vintage, we know, okay, we need to nail the Chardonnay right now at, about 22 and a half Brix. This year, it's going to be a very late year. We never had a heat wave. We started out late. We didn't get much rain, but what rain we did get happened all the way through April 26th. So we're going to let the Chardonnay hang a little bit longer, knowing that our Roussanne isn't going to be that big and opulent. So it's a bit of a guessing game right now, but educated guess. Just kind of practically thinking, okay, what's the Roussanne going to do in another 2 months or another month and a half when we're going to start thinking about harvesting it.
That's so interesting because normally the thinking would be if you're picking something early, then you're gauging the grapes you're picking later off of that early pick and those numbers. But it seems like you're doing it the other way around, where because the Roussanne's so important, you're actually forecasting the Roussanne and then picking the Chardonnay based on that forecasting.
Right. Because Roussanne, I mean, again, at some point you're going to run into winter and dormancy, even in Santa Barbara.
Right.
So, again, it's like, we can't push the Roussanne further, right? So at some point, we're going to get what we're going to get. But Chardonnay we can play with because Chardonnay ripens so much earlier. We'll probably jump into Chardonnay probably Monday night.
Nice. And then all stainless steel for the fermentation and the aging of these two wines.
No, they settle real quick in tank and then into 500-liter French puncheons.
Okay.
But pretty much all neutral. There might be an errant new barrel in because we often will declassify a little bit of Roussanne. The high-end wine is 100% new French 500 liter. So there might be one or two new puncheons in the uni mix.
That's interesting. I don't think I've had a lot of, new oaked Roussannes. What do you find that the oak, the new, and also the neutral brings to the Roussanne? Does it kind of counteract some of that oiliness, or does it really just allow a lot of that texture to exist?
We think of it as framing that oiliness, like a flying buttress on a cathedral. The Roussanne just wants to envelop, right? And then so we're framing it up, and it gives a really nice sweet toast, like that marries with that concentrated honeysuckle pineapple. And then we're really framing it, giving it that framework for 20, 25 years of age. So at some point that oak completely disappears. And that's for
Yeah,
the high-end wine.
yeah, just kind of sanding off the edges and really rounding it out, it sounds like. Nice. Roger wanted to know, he has not opened the uni. He is not a huge sea urchin fan. Probably stepped on one as a kid. I'm sorry about that, Roger. But what do you think about pairing this with seared scallops? Obviously, uni has that richness. Scallops have a little more sweetness to them, but I suspect they would really match well with this wine.
All day. That's like a layup for a wine dinner. Like a lazy chef, scallop, done, move on. That's like, yeah, like the perfect pairing. Any richer white fleshed seafood, shellfish, lobster, anything with that creaminess, but it pairs all the way up to Thanksgiving. If you think about turkey, mashed potato, gravy stuffing, we have this and the high end version always on the Thanksgiving table.
Yeah, Matt and Carrie loving it. Stacy says it's really good and very well balanced. Matt and Carrie are enjoying it with a creamy caramelized onion soup, which just sounds divine. And again, something with just a little bit of sweetness. I can definitely see, like, when I think of a Roussanne, especially something with a little acid like this, like I think of almost like a creamy brie cheese, but with like a nice honeycomb or even a quince paste on top of it. Something where you've got that salty, that richness, but also that just a little bit of sweetness to count to match the wine.
Yeah, just to be a little, controversial,
Please.
uh, you know,
Double quarter pounder with cheese.
well, like, I mean, the next wine, the Von Gris, like, I love it with Latin and Asian spice,
Mhm.
but for whatever reason, like the wine world at some point, like became Riesling obsessed with heat. You go
Yeah,
to
we
any
have Psalms to blame for that.
yeah, cool kid Thai is, at least 10 Rieslings, rah, rah, rah. But at some point we missed the memo. Like when your face is about to fall off from heat, beer doesn't help, Riesling doesn't help, milk helps. The
Yep,
the lactic acid in milk.
absolutely.
Um, so I actually love this wine with heat because it coats and calms and cools without having to have a glass of milk at a Thai restaurant. Um, so I do love it with both Thai and Latin spice, just to like throw it out there that we don't have to have scallops and turkey.
It's true, and it's interesting since the root of this wine was Japanese cuisine, which is notoriously non-spicy. I mean, there's they don't really do peppers there. They do a lot of fermentations, but not peppers over there, which is interesting.
Yeah,
When they've
no
got when they've got
wasabi. Okay, wasabi.
That's true, but yeah, but
Yeah,
even
yeah.
wasabi is sort of
No,
yeah.
but we overuse wasabi so much in American sushi. Like I love it when the sushi chef just yells at you, "No wasabi." And like, a good omakase, they'll let you put wasabi on it, like maybe like one or two of them, or they'll do it for you, like
Well,
not too
exactly.
much.
No, nobody knows how to do the wasabi. Is it like, do you do a pinch with your chopsticks on top? Do you, blend it into your soy sauce? Like, there doesn't seem to be a right answer with wasabi, which is why I'm just enjoy the fish by its own. Sort of like a steak. If you've got to put something on top of the steak, it's not that good steak to begin with. So, but I suspect we'll be talking about that with the Syrah. Susanna, who is a fan of Uchi and is clearly dined there, says Uchi has a really good foie gras sushi. I have actually had foie gras sushi in Cahors years ago on a trade tasting. They took the foie gras, wrapped it in a sushi rice, and then put a strip of the jambon, the cured ham, around it. All things that were indigenous to that Perigord region, and I was unimpressed. It was missing like an acid component. It was like it's the reverse of a Reuben. It was like three great ingredients that just didn't mesh well together. So it's interesting. But I suspect if I had had this uni wine, it would have paired very, very nicely. And actually, I could see this going really well with foie gras as well. That kind of salty, sweet, since Sauterne, a natural pairing with foie gras. This one with that oily mouth finish, especially with like a warmer foie gras, I think would be delicious. Sorry, Mike and Jeannie. I apologize. There are resident vegans here.
What do you think, Chris? Should we move on to wine number two?
Absolutely, Peter. Yeah, let's move on to the Vin Gris. Absolutely. And so I want to talk a little bit about how you guys came to plant Gamay and Trousseau on your vineyard, because these are not your common everyday California grapes that you were saying. Even pre-Judgment of Paris, there was not a lot of Gamay Noir out there. There was maybe a little Trousseau, but these are not common grapes around here. So how did you guys come to discover these two varietals, plant them, and make this wine out of it?
Right. So two completely separate journeys. Trousseau came first. In 2010, we began making Chardonnay for a gentleman named Rajat Par.
Mhm.
And he immediately in 2010 got in my ear as he got to know our terroir even better. That we were on limestone and we were in an arid wind tunnel. And he goes, "Oh my God, you have the opportunity to make pure Trousseau because Trousseau is such a thin-skinned, pale grape, and the cluster is very tight and big. A lot of grapes crammed in together. So the combination of that tight cluster and the thin skins, if you get any moisture in there during the growing season, you're going to get fungal issues, mold, sour rot, botrytis, whatever comes, it'll be there. And so that's a big issue in the Jura where you're in a rain shadow. You're leading up into the Alps. You're on the border of France and Switzerland, so you're looking back across to Beaujolais and Burgundy. So a lot of Trousseau has an inherent funk. And yes, most of the cellars are medieval, really old, impossible to clean and sterilize. But a lot of that Jurassic funk, comes from, the fungal issues in the fruit, in the cluster. So Raj has had this vision, okay, the best vineyards in the Jura are on limestone. You have limestone, but you don't have fungal pressure. We need to try it. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I know, like Trousseau, Jura, it's like the flavor of the minute with the Somme crowd. Just to give you a quick background on Raj, he was the wine director for Michael Mina worldwide, early adopter to Twitter and Instagram. So the time he had 40,000 followers on Instagram, but they were all wine collectors and sommeliers. So hugely influential. And finally, said, Pete, if you end up not liking the wine, I'll just sign a lifetime contract and I'll buy the fruit. I ended up liking the wine. So for 10 years, we had a brand called Colm. Colm is like a little divot within a Burgundian vineyard, and our vineyard is so hilly that Raj always felt like the outside world was forgotten. He was surrounded by the vineyard in a Colm. He could have been in Burgundy. So he wanted to call our brand together Colm. So we were making Trousseau and a Patinade and a couple other wines. And so that's how Trousseau was born. And then Gamay came about. I was actually inspired by a guy named Hervé Sout. I Americanized it to Harvey So Hot because I could never remember his name. And
Oh, you missed Harvey Suits because that was the main character on the TV show Suits. It was right there.
see, I've never watched Suits. Both
Oh,
my
there you
parents are
go.
lawyers, so I read the description. I'm like, yeah, I don't need to watch a TV show about lawyers.
Fair.
Um, but yeah, he makes one called Les Sauterelles, and it's a Gamay from the Northern Rhone, and it's actually my favorite wine that he makes. And I'm like, oh shit, you can make Gamay like this in Syrah territory. We can make Gamay too. Because like we're originally, like when Dad planted the vineyard, Syrah was our knock out of the park hit. Manfred Krankel from Sinequanon was buying the fruit. Adam Tolmack at Ojai was buying the fruit. That created the Syrah craze. So now Ballard Canyon is the only AVA in America dedicated to Syrah. But, we have this thing, with the Rhone Rangers and everything that, we automatically looked, okay, like if Syrah's perfect, we looked south to the Southern Rhone. But I had this aha moment after drinking Sauterelles where I'm like, why didn't we look north? Because for California, we're pretty darn cool climate for Syrah. And Beaujolais is just as close to the Northern Rhone as Châteauneuf-du-Pape,
It's
if not
yeah, it's like
closer.
60 kilometers from Lyon, kind of
Right.
that northern border.
I,
Very, very close.
yeah, like I mean, when I was there last in 2020 in February, I was down all the way down in Cornas, and I think it was like a 2 hour drive back to Lyon.
Yeah.
And that's from the very, very, very bottom of the Syrah territory, let alone Côte d'Orty, which has to be under an hour from Lyon. And yeah, so we through Raj actually we acquired Gamay cuttings from the old planting in Seven Springs up in Oregon, and actually we called our Gamay GDG for the first like I think 7 vintages. When my dad found out we had planted Gamay, he said, "You planted goddamn Gamay," and so we just said that
Better than MFG.
Um, and then, so this one in particular came about because Trousseau never fully covers up. I'm sure it's how it got the name Bastardo in the Iberian Peninsula. For someone used to modern red varietals, it's ugly. Best case, it's pale purple. Worst case, you have a bunch of green clusters with maybe a few pink grapes. But even, 7 out of 10 bunches will have at least a couple errant pink grapes. So we started picking all of those pink clusters for this wine, but it lacked acidity. You know, uh, Most vintages, I didn't love it, and we had this aha moment that Gamay is another pale, thin-skinned red grape. Gamay would lend much more fruit intensity, a crunchiness, higher acidity. And we've been doing a lot of different lots and picking our favorite and kind of assembling the blend and having a lot of fun. The winemaking on this is really unique. It is not a typical rosé. We don't call it a rosé. We call it a unicorn. It's not a chilled red. It's not a rosé. It's somewhere in the middle. So we pick the bunches, and then we just lay them in a stainless steel tub, put it under cloth. So it's uncrushed, but not in a carbonic tank. We walk away for 2 weeks. We want a little bit of oxidation because the grapes have such high acidity. We want a lot of texture there. Then we gently press for 2 weeks into neutral French puncheons. And then we bottle it pretty darn early so we don't worry about adding anything to it. It doesn't need preservative, but it should be very tactile. Again, it sits whole grape for 2 weeks and it's bottled unfiltered. We get bored of rosé by this time of year, if you've been drinking rosé all summer, you're kind of looking for something more.
Shut your mouth. Never get bored of rosé. Rosé all year.
Well, that's why I make that.
Not rosé all day. Rosé all year.
Okay, rosé all year, but interesting rosé.
There you go. Yes.
And this is an interesting rosé. And yeah, I just, my vineyard crew, they call this rosé con cojones. Rosé with a little beef.
Well, yeah, especially the color, because we can talk about marketing trends, but the trend tends to be towards paler rosés. But obviously, even with these thin-skinned, very pinkish light grapes, I imagine those 2 weeks of skin contact basically provide that darker color. Is that kind of a consistency across this wine?
For sure. Yeah. And what I love about the labels is, the third wine in the series is an unfiltered Sauvignon Blanc. And they tell the tale of our terroir. We're so maritime. I was talking about back with the map. The ocean really defines us, and that collision of the Arctic flow with the Channel Islands jetty, where the cold airs, the cold water, and there too the cold air is trapped off of Point Conception, pushing in, creates a very fertile ecosystem from the collision from the plankton all the way up to the great white shark. So my head winemaker, the guy looking over the Roussanne back here, Kyle, he was attacked by a juvenile female great white shark back in 2008. She only took the back of his board and death rolled it down and threw him up in the air like a teeter-totter. He was fine. That same female shark came back in 2010 and killed a boogie boarder. So nobody surfs at Surf Beach off Lompoc. Everybody surfs at Halama. So we were talking about, okay, what's unique about our ocean? And my creative director said, well, the sharks. We all turned to Kyle.
The killer teenage girl shark, exactly. Yeah.
Killer teenage girls. But yeah, and then the cacti for the Von Gris, perhaps most important, just how arid we are. So a really important thing about Stolpman, we don't irrigate. So in 2023 and 2024, we dry farmed all of our mature vines. The beauty of being on limestone is that shock retains the moisture from the winter, and every year we're forcing the roots deeper and deeper into the limestone because they're searching for water. We don't just automatically feed them. Even on a drought year, we never irrigate the vineyard in between fruit set and veraison. So that's the period, usually, almost 10 weeks, even on a drought year, no irrigation, because that's when the vine will take any available moisture and try and fatten up the grape to grow the grape. That's the grape growth phase. And then once the vine begins to ripen the grape, the vine is using the energy to ripen, not to fatten the grape. And then we'll give the vine one drink, just to give it the energy to ripen to an optimal stage. So Ballard Creek runs right below our vineyard. There are prickly pear cactus all over the creek bed that never runs. When we do get torrential rain in the winter, it'll run for a day, but that's it. And the cacti remain. So the prickly pear cactus really tell the tale of our terroir above the ground, and then the shark and the uni are right below the ocean surface.
Yep. Or as I would say, what are things that can stab you and make you bleed, Alex? But can you talk a little bit? Susanna pointed out that there's some really nice acid on this wine. Can you talk a little bit about what limestone does to the acid in the wines? Because I know limestone is a great, kind of a barometer for acidity in wines and finding that balance.
Right. That's the only proven benefit of limestone. If you get really nitty gritty, we just had the head of UC Davis Enology and Viticulture out, and we were joking that the French will talk your ear off about minerality and the je ne sais quoi of limestone. But the one proven benefit is that flattened seashells don't have acid. They're extremely base. So anything you grow on it is the inverse. So if your tomatoes on limestone, they're going to be tangy and vibrant. So the vision of Stolpman, and why my dad only sought out limestone, he looked all over Western Paso, finally was able to buy our land in like I said, 1990. His vision was to make yummy, delicious, hedonistic California wine, but with verve, with balance. And that's why he was fixated wholly on the limestone. And he was really prodded on by two properties, Ridge Montebello and Calera. Those were his like two, if he did have a vision board
His
back
muse
then.
vineyards, basically.
Right, right.
Yes. Nice. So that's fascinating. So how, and I want to get into your story of wine and how you got into the family business, but how did your dad get into wine and kind of make that jump from being an attorney to deciding I want to own land, grow grapes, and eventually make wine?
Yeah, so dad moved from Ohio when he was 17 to Southern California, got into UCLA, and got into a big argument with my grandfather. So he was putting himself through UCLA. Instead of going out and getting a normal job, he and his buddies started a valet car parking company. And they initially, their only area of success was the Hollywood Hills. They were able to pretty much monopolize all the private parties up there because none of the established valet parking companies want to deal with the tiny little winding alleyways. Yet we're talking 1968. These people wanted to throw parties, so that was a very quick indoctrination to Hollywood. Being up until the wee hours, fetching people's cars for them, and a lot of these folks were throwing parties every week. And got to know my dad, and a couple movie producers only drank first growth Bordeaux. And one day or one night, I don't know, this guy had wanted my dad to take his daughter out on a date because his daughter was very much enjoying the 1960s, that lifestyle, and he saw my dad as this very well put
Sobering influence. Yeah.
entrepreneurial good kid. So I think my dad had already taken, I think her name was Rebecca, out on a date. She wanted nothing to do with him. That didn't work out. My dad really did it because she got to drive the Bentley, her dad's Bentley. But he said, so why do you ignore the beautiful women at your parties? And you and your buddies are over here in the corner fawning over this fancy French wine. And the guy looked at my dad and said, you've never had Bordeaux. And my dad was like probably 19 at the time. And he took him down to the cellar, here, try this 1955, try this 1947. And my dad just thought it was the coolest thing to have all this fancy wine, showed it off to his business partners. And that stuck with my dad. And what my dad quickly figured out was if you're successful, you appreciate fine wine. He also figured out that if you order a bottle of wine out on a date, you never get carded, and the date is impressed. And then you have the social lubricant of that bottle of wine. So that became his thing and it worked on my mom. My mom and dad ended up getting engaged in law school. My dad sold his portion of the car parking company in order to study for the bar. They were getting married. They took a road trip for the honeymoon. They wound up in Napa, and it's a foreshadowing of my dad's success as a lawyer. He was already able to bullshit his way through a barrel tasting. Back then, you just walked right into a winery. There were no taste rooms, and hey, can we try some wine? And my
Pound
dad
on
could
the
already,
door, and all of a sudden,
right,
the owner of Chateau Montelena shows up and is like, "All right, I'll
right.
pour you some stuff." Yeah.
Also a lawyer, right?
Right,
And
exactly.
yeah, and my mom put in my dad's head, hey, one day, we should do this. And as things evolved, a lot of my mom's friends had gone to school in Northern California. A lot of people had gone to Berkeley, and they'd gone into kind of the Northern California scene. Kermit Lynch was coming online, so they were drinking French wine, great French wine. Alice Waters was kind of like the whole like eat fresh, eat local.
Yeah.
And so I remember growing up, we had a house on Hollywood Beach in Ventura, and Memorial Day, Labor Day, New Year's, we would have like the same three couples show up. Every couple would be in charge of set meals. They would bring all their ingredients with them. They spent weeks shopping and figuring out the menus. Ton of wine, and so that it's just like it was what they were into, and And so it's my dad, as his career took off as a trial lawyer, he wanted an investment. He had joined, he was passionate about wine. And as a good lawyer, he just researched and researched and researched and figured out the whole limestone thing. And he wanted to own a vineyard. His theory was, find great terroir and the winemakers will come.
Mhm.
So through the 90s, we were only a source vineyard. However, my dad only wanted to employ full time. His time in California and being a lawyer representing workers, he didn't want anything to do with migrant labor. So he asked Ruben, our vineyard manager, is there a way that we can employ the same crew year round? I want to know the people who work for me. I want to know that they have stability, that their kids are getting an education. And Ruben ran with that idea of full-time employment, of having a year-round crew. So we had high labor cost and then of course low yields from the infertile limestone. So my dad quickly realized that the model was not economically sustainable, that we had to vertically integrate and begin making wine. So when I was off at college at Georgetown in DC, my dad was, we would talk all the time, and we would drive up and hang out at the vineyard when I was home on break, and he was jumping in full on. He had totally changed the business model from a very simple grow the grapes, sell it by the ton, to all of a sudden we were building a winery, winemaking style, branding, distribution, taste room. So when I graduated college, it had gotten much more complicated.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm already kind
Awesome.
of getting into my entrance in the
Yeah.
company. I'm
No,
jumping ahead.
yeah, that's a good place to stop for now. And then we'll jump back into that later because we want to hear about your when did you graduate Georgetown?
Oh, 04.
Okay. I almost came within a hair's breadth of going to Georgetown. But I would have been a little older than you were there. But we could have been Hoyas together, but that's all right.
You've aged well.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I was recruited to play football there and desperately wanted to go, but my mom threw a conniption fit and I ended up going to Princeton instead. That was my consolation, was going to Princeton instead of Georgetown.
Well, I
So,
did not get into Princeton, so congratulations.
but you got into Georgetown and you're doing quite well for yourself. So huzzah. So to kind of wrap up with this vin gris, which is absolutely delicious. Matt and Carrie paired this with a baked brie with cranberry sauce and a puffed pastry on it. Um, David, we'll get into your singledom with the next wine. But what are some other wine pairings that you would pair this with? We talked a little bit about, I could actually see this as a great sushi wine. I think it's got that nice fruit to it. It's got enough heft to counter some of especially the meatier fish, the toros, the maguros. But great acid on it. But what would be some of the pairings that you would pair with this, Peter?
We really, to be honest, we treat it more as an aperitif.
Okay, fair.
Just whatever you're doing, even if you're grilling sausages, it
Yeah.
is so flexible because of that high acid and the tactile substance in the mid palate. Um, but really, you can throw anything on it. I mean, ideally, it's not with big red meat because that's why we make red wine. Um, but it is one of the most versatile wines in our entire quiver. And again, it's that 1-2 punch where it does have deceiving substance and weight on the mid palate, but then zing, that acid kicks in, and you're like, okay, what's next? Your palate's almost ready for anything. So I know that's a total cop out, but yeah,
That's okay.
anything from sausage to an entree salad, again,
No, I could see, especially as an aperitif, this pairing, like I'm just thinking about like a beautiful charcuterie plate with salami and prosciutto, and because it has this sort of natural space where you've got the fruit on it, but then the acid, and to have that sort of saltiness drop right in the middle of that would be just such a nice counter to those things. I think it just would work in harmony, or even like a grilled vegetable, cold vegetables with a little bit of like a red wine vinegar on top of it, because it's got the sweetness to match the acidity. If you're doing, zucchini or squash or whatnot, kind of marinated peppers, I think would be
you
delicious with this.
all right. Now we're in a fight because you completely stole my thunder there because I was about when you said charcuterie, I'm like, yeah, even the difficult wine pairing stuff on that platter. I
Yeah.
love great olives.
Mm,
Tremendously difficult to pair with, but
absolutely.
I mean that Von Green, a fleshy, delicious olive, or you kind of hit the nail on the head. Even friggin' pickled vegetables, like the bane
Yep.
of pairing,
Yep.
it can really stand up to anything.
Absolutely. No, it's delicious. And you can definitely see where that salty note would just sort of drop right in there and be just complete the circle on it. I think square that circle would be delicious. So um beautiful. Let's move on to the La Cuadrilla. And this wine has just an amazing story. We touched on it briefly in our email that we sent out to everybody, but I really want you to kind of get into the nuts and bolts. You mentioned Ruben earlier, who's been your vineyard manager, basically your father's right hand, the Stolpman right hand for, the last, gosh, whatever it is now, 30 plus years that you guys have been making wine. So take us through the evolution of this wine, how it came to be, the purpose it serves, and how it's made every year.
Yeah, you're right. I touched upon kind of the start of Cuadrilla, where my dad, basically he thought if my dream of buying land and starting a vineyard doesn't happen, I want it to positively affect everybody involved. Again, I want nothing to do with migrant labor, of whole families moving around from crop to crop. The kids never go to school. They never learn proper English. They don't have opportunity. But if you give an immigrant a steady job, all of a sudden the second generation gets an education, they have access to the opportunity that America should offer, right? That is the American way, and I'm certainly a beneficiary of it. So Ruben ran with that. In the 90s, we planted 152 acres, but by the late 90s, we ran into kind of a rhythm. Like, we kind of settled, and Ruben sensed it, and he wasn't satisfied by that. So he said, you know what? I jumped the fence. I started as a field hand, and now I'm a vineyard manager. My dad had sponsored Ruben to get a green card. Today, he and his wife Maria are full citizens. Ruben and Maria are both the godparents of my children. And so, Ruben being Ruben, he said, "You know what? I'm going to train you to be farmers, not just workers." And he started giving the crew their own quadra. Spanish for a block, a vineyard, and he didn't issue work orders. They had to pay attention to every other training technique, from pruning timing, leafing, shoot thinning, adjustments, training up, wire design, all the way through harvest. And the crew became even more engaged. They became much more proactive. And they took a lot of pride in owning their own vineyard block every year. It was a story they could tell their families back in Mexico. So there was a fateful barbecue back around 2001, and I was there, drinking beer, hanging out. It was got probably home from in between my freshman and sophomore year of college, and my dad, I was up playing volleyball with the crew, and my dad told Ruben, he's like, you know what, the one thing that feels hollow to me is that you and I are the only people here drinking wine. And everybody here, everybody we're throwing a party for, they're the reason our wines are great. It's their labor that
Well, that's
makes
a little bit
this.
on you too, Peter. You should have been drinking wine at that party, it sounds
Yeah, true. Yeah, blame me. Um, and everybody was drinking beer, and then there were tequila bottles sort of laid out on the tables once it got dark, and my dad just said it's too bad that like everybody doesn't appreciate the fruit of their labor.
like.
And Ruben just said, well, like I've been giving the crew their own block every year, and they really love it. They take pride in it. And my dad interrupted me and said, "Oh my God, we need to make that wine separately." And so the next year, we actually that harvest, we actually had the crew go in the morning and work the fermentations, and that only lasted 1 year because we realized after picking all night, the crew needs to go to bed. They don't need to go into the
Right.
winery. But
Yeah.
we
Start doing
bought.
punch downs and sulfuring and all that good stuff. Yeah.
They were more than willing to do it. They were so into the idea, and we bottled that wine. We didn't put a back label on it. It was for the crew to enjoy, and it was too much wine for them to even store, right? And Dad forgot that not everybody has a wine cellar, so everybody on the crew threw big parties to drink their wine, and right then and there, like local restaurant workers were going to work and like, hey, why don't we carry the crew wine from Stolpman? My cousin or my nephew or my niece is on the crew, and the wine's really good, and it's their wine that they make. So the very next vintage, we put a back label on it, and we were amazed that, like, it's such a unique concept. Nobody had ever had a vineyard worker, wine before
Right.
at that point. And we gave all the money back to the crew. It was only maybe a few hundred cases at its height during that phase. But man, it filled everybody with so much pride. Everybody was still getting cases of wine that they could share with their friends and family and bring back to Mexico for the holidays. So it got the loyalty even more. And then, of course, there were bonuses at the end of the year that we divided by seniority from all the sales. So that's how La Cuadrilla started, and the vintages where we sold it in that form were like 2003 through 2008. Now, in the meantime, I'd graduated from Georgetown in '04, moved back to LA, actually to Long Beach, and I'd go do my laundry at my parents' house every Tuesday because, hey, go have family dinner, use mom's, washer and dryer instead of my
That,
apartment
that
complex.
seems, I was gonna say, that seems a little more expensive than the like $4 and quarters that you would need at the
Yeah, but then I get
complex.
mom's cooking and,
Sure.
and get to hang out and drink good wine. But every Tuesday, Dad was more and more stressed out because, as I mentioned, like he had dug himself an even bigger financial hole and a much more complex business that he was trying to manage. He was getting up at 4 a.m., doing winery work, emails, rah, rah, and then going into the law office. And at one point, I'm like, Dad, you know what? I'm not passionate about my job. You obviously need help. You need a manager. You can't afford one. I'm going to quit my job. But he and I both agreed, like, I didn't know enough, right? I'm just
Right.
the owner's son. So we designed this whole program where I worked double vintage. I made wine in the Barossa Valley in Australia. Then I went over to Chianti Classico and made
Hmm.
Sangiovese in 2006. So then I came home and got a job in distribution for the Henry Wine Group. So I ended up taking over in April of '09. And, our bank had written us a letter in November of '08 telling us, so February of '09, we've opted not to renew your credit lines. Good luck.
Mhm.
So when I took over, we're actually in default because all that money was in barrels and everything else.
Right.
And then Dad spent the entire calendar year of '09 fighting off cancer. So
Mhm.
he was out of commission. So it's a real stressful trial by fire. In the middle of that, Ruben came to me. He'd gotten approved for a personal loan. He tried to lend me $100,000 to help me cover
Wow.
payroll.
Wow.
So if there had ever been any doubt about Ruben, which there had never been, that would
Yeah.
have been squashed then and there. But we finally did get refinanced right before harvest 2010. And the first person I called was Ruben. And I was expecting, let's have a barbecue, let's celebrate. But instead, he got really serious and said, okay, Pete, you're out of excuses. You and Jess need to come down to Jalisco. You've never seen our hometown. You need to
Mm.
come down and celebrate. And that's what we did. And I got to meet, the entire Ruben's family, Maria's family, and then a lot of the family members of our crew. And I like to say the last night, Ruben threw a big party, and I had a moment of clarity in the tequila fog. And I just said, Ruben, if Dad doing the right thing, and then you taking it a step further and creating the Cuadrilla program and making a little bit of wine for the crew, if this has had such a profound effect on this whole little agricultural community in the middle of nowhere in rural Jalisco, now that the future looks bright again, we survived the recession, we have financing again, we need to make the wine bigger. It can't just be limited to the training block.
Right.
So we went home and reblended the '09 vintage. Ever since then, Cuadrilla has been 10% of our production, and the entire profit margin goes back to now our 37 full-time workers. At the
Mm.
time, we only had 15. So I'm really proud that we've grown our human workforce. And that's when we began having fun with the label. And every vintage, we changed the label. That was my favorite one. Ruben had promised to get one of the labels tattooed, and he never did. So we got our revenge. And so via Photoshop, we covered Ruben in tattoos. So si se puede, yes you can, really uplifting tattoos. We still make this wine. We call it El Padrino de la Cuadrilla, the godfather of the crew, which is, he is the godfather of my kids, and he really developed this whole program and our whole culture on the vineyard. So we still bottle this in Magnum every few vintages. We want to keep his tattoos alive for his lifetime. And the last vintage, 2022, was the mother vine. We have the only mother vine in the world. This is all one vine up here. They're cuttings from Domaine Auguste Klopp in Cornas. So that whole circle is one interconnected vine. The original cutting went into the middle in 2013, and we're layering with a French called Provenage. We could never have even the surrounding vineyard so tight, no mechanization. But then to train a mother vine that's going to take over 20 years to complete, you can't do that with contracted labor. So really, the crew defines everything we do, and I just love the 23 label. It's titled "La Cuadrilla Saves the World with Their Grapevine." So we're galloping through the dark night. Instead of a lasso, we have a grapevine held high. Instead of a gun in our holster, we have a wine bottle. And even though it's a dark night, we have the extremely bright stars of hope shining. So the
And you've got
message
a whole
here is
bunch of
time,
uni on the ground that you're avoiding.
they're kind of like agave-ish weeds.
Agave,
But
uni, tomato.
right. Yeah, and the idea is, we had to design this label back in last May 2024. We didn't know what was going to happen with the election, but we just felt chaos and gloom coming. If one side won, there'd be a rebellion. If the other side won, there'd be chaos. We had no idea how much chaos there'd be. But when times are tough, and the same thing happened when we had our COVID shutdown. The only decision that I made that fateful Sunday night, I called Ruben and said, "Hey, no matter what, La Cuadrilla is full time. I need to figure out the rest of the company, but this would all be marketing bullshit if when we get scared about the future or the economy, we all of a sudden cut back our crew and fire people. We are more devoted than ever to our people, and I can't imagine any other way. I mean, last night we had a huge picking night. We finished Trousseau and Gamay, took a chunk out of the Sauvignon Blanc. And it's just such a great feeling to know everybody out there, everybody's excited, everybody knows what needs to happen. And we take our lunch break around midnight, and it's one big family of 37 folks, and it's so special for me. Back when I was 8, 9 years old, I was running around playing with the children of the crew. And those kids that I grew up with, one is the head nurse on our mobile health clinic. So not only was she able to get an education, but with her education, she decided to give back to the agricultural community. Another one is my electrician. So my dad's dream worked from my generation, and it's so special now for me to watch my kids playing with the children of the crew and wondering what they're going to be when they grow up. So yeah, the next vintage Cuadrilla is coming down the mountain, and we have a mariachi band walking down the mountain. So we're very optimistic that hopefully within a year from now, when the 2024 is released, we'll feel like, okay, we climbed the mountain, we fought the fight, and hopefully we'll feel like we're going downhill. But we'll see. We're trying to be optimistic.
Yes, hopefully the mountain is clear of obstacles for everybody walking down the mountain at that point in 2026, that late 2026. That would be fantastic. Who does the artwork for your labels? That is one of the questions that was asked here.
Yeah, so the illustration on the Uni and the Von Gris are done by a fellow redhead tenured professor of illustration at UCSB, Eric Belts. He's a wine club member of ours, and he'd always do these incredible doodles, making fun of me while I was giving seminars and give them to me. And it all started with Uni, and now he does the illustration on our main label, like the Syrah OG. And then all the layout and the Cuadrilla labels are done by our creative director, also runs our website, Carrie. She went to Brooks in Santa Barbara, passionate about photography, needed a day job upon graduation. Luckily for us, she got that day job at our tasting room and started volunteering for projects. And today she does all of our creative, and she's an amazing resource. Very unique job where she does so many different things behind the scenes, including the Cuadrilla label.
It's amazing. Yeah, no, your labels are gorgeous and very unique and stand out, which is great. But they also kind of capture the beauty of them is they don't feel corporate. They still have that like, you know, small family one run winery feel to it. And I know you guys obviously, you have wide distribution and you're doing a fair amount of cases, but clearly this is still a family operation. I mean, you guys have very much kept it feeling small even as you've expanded out.
Yeah, these days, I think we've hit a really nice scale. We're making enough wine that on the entry level we can really over deliver. I have a lot of friends who are making a couple thousand cases a year. Well, every bottle needs to be $55 and up, just to keep the lights on. So, and again, it's the estate that I inherited. My dad was ambitious. He planted a lot of vines. So that scale is built in, but we're big enough where we can really over deliver on the entry level. And then, of course, we have our $128 bottlings as well. So it's a really nice position where we can do everything by hand. We make the wine the same way that my friends are making 2,000 cases a year make. And if we graduated to the next level and tried to double again, we couldn't do that. And that's why I'm not trying to grow.
Yeah. Nice. And we have a lot of questions about the logistics of coming to visit you and whatnot, which we'll get to at the end, but we've still got one more wine to go through. Before we do that, let's talk a little bit about food pairings with this one. I have to say, last night I threw this in the refrigerator and actually put a little bit of a chill on it, and it was just magical. It's even though it is, predominantly Syrah, it really held up. The fruit held up, the aromatics held up to a little bit of a chill on it. It's not a light red, but it just it held up quite nicely.
Yeah, I mean, we make a lot of lighter bodied red wines. We make a Trousseau, a Gamay, Noir. We make a carbonic Sangiovese. So this is kind of right into the midpoint of the continuum of red wine we make. Um, Certainly big enough to stack up to red meat. But what I love, even this is our entry level vineyard wide blend, right? So the blend changes a little bit every year. But what I love about it is that it's aromatic, it's ripe, it's perfumey, it's dense, but then it has like great yin and yang of energy behind it, and that balance really makes it lighter on its feet than it should be. And again, that's the limestone to thank, and our dry farming where we don't have to wait for dehydration to get concentration. So it has the energy where you don't have to limit it to only steak. I think you mentioned we have some vegetarians with us. But I mean, and any kind of mushroom tofu dish. We're at a ramen place, and like anything on that menu. I mean, shit, I should have brought this to ramen.
That would have been I could see that with ramen. That would be fantastic. Yeah, especially with more miso base and with the egg and some of the pork. I think that would be delicious. Yeah, this is just it feels like that kind of classic versatile red where you could pair this with hamburgers. I know Roger much earlier had said that he paired this wine with a New York strip, I believe. Let me go. I'm scrolling back through the chat to see. Oh no, that's the Syrah, sorry, with the New York strip with the balsamic reduction. Um, but yeah, this is something you could pair with, hamburgers off the grill, sausages, as you mentioned. This would go fantastic with like carne asada. It's just such a nice, well-balanced wine.
Yeah, mushroom risotto is a great call, by the way.
Yeah. Yes, that would be fantastic. Absolutely. Nice. Um, yeah, it's beautiful. Have you thought about, you mentioned you have kind of the two wines under the La Cuadrilla label. Have you thought about expanding that out? Maybe getting into a white or a rosé?
Yeah, well, that's really interesting you mentioned that. So we have another brand called Para Maria for
Mhm.
Maria, Ruben's wife, because Ruben and Maria never took a cut of the Quadrilla bonus. They're the American dream in one generation. Ruben is not only our vineyard manager, He's a partner in Coastal Vineyard Care. Their company farms all of the best vineyards in Santa Barbara.
Yes.
So
Just changed their name.
so they're doing great. I wanted to have a partnership with Ruben and Maria, and that program we kind of cherry pick Ruben's other properties, and we have made a rosé under that collaboration. But for the wholesale market, we're really focused on this one wine and that messaging. And then for our wine club, we actually do a La Cuadrilla Special, which is much more limited. And that's actually the final declassification of all of our high-end wines. We hold longer in barrel. And so that wine comes from like tasting each French puncheon right before we bottle. And often what happens is like 6 puncheons are just magic. And 3 puncheons are really good, but blending them, like you're like, no, we want to capture that magic. What do we do with the other 3 puncheons? It's really been like intermittently we've made that wine, but as we've kind of refined, like every year we have a little bit extra of leftover only from the highest end cuvées where we're doing Cuadrilla Special at a little bit higher price point, and the wines even like deeper and riper. So we're getting creative with, because what we're devoted to is continuing to grow the profit sharing every year. But we want to continue to over deliver on the price points as well. We want this wine to be accessible to the people, right? Not to go down any socialist direction, but I mean it's a wine for our workers. We want working people to be able to afford it.
But it's also capitalism, and you want the working people who are making it to make as much money as possible. So
true. And I mean, and this wine is not about charity.
Right.
This wine is
No, it's capitalism. It's a capitalist wine. It's they're making it, and you're giving the profits to the people who make it.
I mean, transparently, like if we want to have the best vineyard crew in the world, they need to be the best paid vineyard crew in the world. And luckily we've never had a labor shortage because of it. Everybody in Lompoc wants to work for Stolpman because they're guaranteed full-time employment and they get paid better than anybody else in the vineyard. So
I have to ask this, just knowing the wine industry, do you get asks from other vineyards, other winery owners to possibly borrow your crew during harvest time? Given we've had a lot of labor shortages and you guys have a full-time crew, are there people sort of asking if they can borrow your crew for a day or two if they're not being used?
No, we would never let someone borrow, but it's really this
not
time,
borrow, but like rent them out.
It's all through Ruben. So the past that's a crazy, actually of the moment question, because this is the only time of year where that happens. The past 2 weeks where we haven't been picking much, really, our only heavy night was last night. And we didn't have a lot to do. All of our final adjustments are done. So Ruben has actually had elements of our crew in his other vineyards just to make sure that they're filling up their hours, because right now we don't really have a need. And then also for the Par Maria program, we do all of our own picking for that program as well. So they've been actually we'll see how this comes together, but Par Maria might be a PGT, it might be a Pinot Noir Gamay blend for 25. So the first time ever we picked 25 tons Pinot Noir. We've never made Pinot Noir before.
Interesting. Is that at a estate or is that from a different vineyard?
No, again, Par Maria is all about Ruben's other vineyards and finding opportunity where we can get class AAA fruit at approachable tonnage price points where we can just pass it on to the customer.
That's impressive to get something like that. Yeah, that's quite a steal.
You can never do it without Ruben. And I often will sign an NDA 50-50. 50% of the time it's just we'll never tell which vineyard it came from. 50% of the time I actually have to sign the NDA, but either way we get the best fruit.
Yeah, it's just the Santa Barbara County designation. We won't tell you exactly where it comes from, but just know it's really good.
Yeah.
I love it. Beautiful. Let's move on to the last wine of the night, which is the OG, the 2022 Syrah You mentioned earlier, Ballard Canyon, obviously your father, the first one really to plant in Ballard Canyon. And Syrah was his predominant focus. Why Syrah in this particular region?
We actually, Dad wasn't sure what would work. So
That's
that's
an
Dad's mom,
awesome members only jacket, by the way.
right? I mean, that photo was taken in 1990, but they didn't get the memo. Like they're still looking very 1980s.
Is is that your mom? Because that's an awesome. I hope your mom still has that jacket because that
I need to
is
dig up the photo, but they had that both outfits in entirety as typical people in their 70s. They are total hoarders. So Halloween, probably back 2021, Jess dug through all of, throughout their closets. And Jess and I had a mustache at the time during COVID, and we dressed up and did that identical pose for Halloween.
nice. You
So
could you
uh,
could honestly sell her jacket probably online or at the Real Real for like at least 5,000, if not like $10,000 with the studs and everything. That's amazing.
right. So yeah, the OG. So Dad took the shotgun approach, and we planted Cabernet Franc, Merlot, and Syrah. And then in like by 99, we had 18 varietals planted. We quickly realized that we were too cold for Bordeaux. And that was a huge lesson because if you're out on the vineyard in July and August, even September, in the middle of the day before the wind kicks up, you feel hot. But the second the wind kicks up, the leaves are fluttering in the air, the vines are cooled down. And then the temperature drops 40 degrees at nightfall. Um, so we learned the hard way that we were too cold for Bordeaux, but the Syrah again was perfect. So we ripped out all the Bordeaux, planted more Syrah, other Rhone varietals. But this OG bottling was that initial planting of Syrah in 1992 and 1993. And this is the block that Manfred Krankel and Adam Tolmack were purchasing from. This is, the block that Beckman was buying from. So Beckman bought the property next to us. Based on the quality we were making, Honada was purchased and planted. Roussanne, everybody in Ballard Canyon today, Kinsey, Tiralta, Larner. So this OG wine is what started the Ballard Canyon Syrah movement.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating. And why Syrah? Like what and where did the initial cuttings come from? Were there a particular clone or like was there what was the thought that went into that particular Syrah to go in there?
So clone wise, we went after what our mentors told us was the best. So at the time, available material was Durell, which turned out to be a variation of Clone One. Astoria River, which we still have Durell in Astoria River. We've actually continued to replant Astoria River. One of the original strains that was planted at Sac Mesa Black Bear. And what else? Pretty quickly, we got 383 and 470, which we like quite a bit. But yeah, this OG is all Estrella and Durell. And we planted Syrah. A lot of winemakers at the time were interested in buying Syrah fruit. Keep in mind, we were only planting to sell fruit, and pretty quickly we figured out just how windy we are. And we started out, talking, showing you the map, showing you the kind of the wind tunnel. It mirrors the Northern Rhone. So in the Northern Rhone, you have the cold Northern European continent, that cold air staying low, emptying through the steep river gorge, filling the vacuum of the hot Mediterranean rising. We're in the same situation of that cold Pacific pushing in, trapped, and then getting sucked through by the Mojave through the chute, the east-west transverse ranges. So number one, it's the wind. And then number two is just how hardy Syrah is, that it likes to get beat up. It loves to be starved for water. Wants to root deeply down and find a little bit of moisture down in the chalk. We like to joke that I was sent to Australia to learn how not to make Syrah, what they call Shiraz, and it's literally the opposite style that we make. We pick taut with energy, we rely on the concentration of our tiny grapes. In Australia, they're irrigating, then they wait for dehydration to get that really jammy profile. And then they have to add water back. So we picked at 19 degrees potential alcohol, then added 3,000 liters of water to bring the potential alcohol down to 16%. That wine would be labeled at 15, added acid, inoculated, fed the yeast, added tannin because the grapes were so racinated and so droopy, they didn't have any tannin left. And that's just insane to me. Syrah is a naturally tannic grape. It has thick skins, but not if you're picking droopy raisins.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it just everything came together. The limestone wind tunnel. There's only one famous limestone outcropping in the northern Rhone. We actually have cuttings from that parcel at Châtelet and Saint Joseph. But the granite makes sense in France, but then you translate Syrah to California, where we have all the sunshine. Syrah does want to get riper. It's so important then to have that acidifying limestone to make the wine bright and to give verve and energy and that raw sangre.
Yeah, I find Syrah always seems to do best when it's near water, like whether it's the Rhone coming up, through Grenache and Saint Joseph and Hermitage and whatnot. But we've had some questions about, oddly enough, the embossing on the bottle. It's a very kind of Chateauneuf de Pop thing to have the bottle embossed, and you guys put Ballard Canyon in that kind of raised glass lettering across the top. Was that intentional or just really something to kind of set it apart?
Yeah, when we got the Ballard Canyon AVA approved in 2013, I called a meeting with all of the vintners and really laid out, okay, like what do we stand for? And in a shocking turn of events, it was unanimous that everybody agreed Syrah is our calling card. So that bottle was, agreed upon that only growers in Ballard Canyon could use it only for Syrah. And what's interesting that 2022 OG is the last bottle made under the old mold. So I actually have the 3D printed prototype. I don't think you can see it, but the Ballard Canyon, when we created our new mold, it's actually
Yeah.
much bigger.
Oh,
So all of our 2023s, that cartouche on the shoulder actually pops even more. I was actually like back then I was young and easily influenced, so I listened to my constituents as president of Ballard Canyon AVA, and everybody's worried about having to center the label. Nobody wanted to do that, so we rotated that initial mold 3 times around the bottle. So it's really
mhm.
small. The new mold only rotates 2, and it's much more eye-catching, and I just think really classy. So we're no longer just using it for Syrah. It's really kind of like the Albaza mold, just like a stamp of quality.
Wow. So as Susanna pointed out, this is a collectible bottle that she should hold on to this, and in like 20 years, because it's the last of the mold, it will be worth something.
You never know.
It's true. It's worth whatever somebody will pay for it. That's the value of that. Beautiful. So take us through these particular vines. Like, how are you tending to them? Given their age, these are Syrah vines at this point, which are now what, 33 years old. Kind of just probably hitting their peak, but Syrah not necessarily known as an older vine per se. So what are you seeing from the grapes that you're getting from this particular block?
Yeah, not in California. Again, the Syrah plantations in California, there's not a whole lot of history. Like,
Yeah,
the modern day of Syrah started with Gary
yeah.
Epperly and Pastor Robles. But anyways, great point. So it's a ton of work to take care of these vines. Um, pruning is a necessary evil. Every time you prune, you open up a wound. To me, mechanized pruning is the root of all evil in viticulture. Every pruning cut we take is so careful. The Italian pruning guys taught us so much about vine kinkering. But even if you prune so carefully, we angle our pruning cut away from the bud. So all the fog or rain moisture drips away from the bud. That way we only have to do 2 sulfur sprays all year.
Mhm.
Um, we have to leave enough room to allow the vine, the wound to heal so that scab doesn't inhibit the sap flow of the vine. But even being that careful, every 20 to 25 years, we have to completely reinvigorate the tip of the iceberg. So because we're dry farming, we reckon that about 70% of the vine, even when the vine is in full growth up top, is below the ground. That is the magic of the old vine. But what we run into is we wind up congesting the vine and getting it unhealthy up top. So because we're organic, we're not spraying herbicide, we look for shoots in the trunk. And whenever we see that in a 20-year-old vine, we begin to train that shoot out to be a new cordon. And once we get that established after 2 years, then we chop off the old trunk and we have a completely new, uninhibited cordon system feeding from that massive root system. So that's we were able, once we started actively, we're able to pretty much get about 90% of the vines reinvigorated within 5 years. But again, it's vine by vine. That's the importance of Cuadrilla, of having a skilled crew to take care of these old vines, because every time we're pruning, we're also looking for that growth to start training anew.
How did that sorry to interrupt. How did that technique come about? Because this is one of the first times I'm ever hearing of that, and it's a novel concept, but it totally makes sense, which is, cut off it's like a green harvest basically, but you're cutting off a good portion of the trunk to allow the new cordons to thrive.
The answer is very short. Reuben.
Okay.
Reuben invented this, as far as I know. UC Davis professor, who's also a consultant, came down to learn from him. And then it's pretty funny. He tried it on a rather large vineyard and killed 40% of the vines because its timing was just off.
Amazing. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
There's a phrase in Santa Barbara County, if you're looking at vineyard, like, God, that's a good looking vineyard. Oh yeah, that's RBS. Or no, sorry. FBR, farmed by Reuben. Because
I love it. Go ahead.
The amazing thing about Reuben's empire when it comes to vineyard management is when Reuben finds a really ambitious, smart young person, he moves them into Stolpman to work for a few years under our lifers to learn their approach, learn everything that they're doing, looking for. And then that young person gets promoted out to be a foreman, then vineyard manager. So all of Reuben's vineyards are farmed by these like-minded, artisanal, treating the vine individually, thoughtful approach. And it's totally different than
Reuben's family tree, basically, is what he's established.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So what's the average age of or I guess the average tenure of your current staff? It sounds like you've had guys who have been there for, 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, we're perpetually in the 5 to 6 average tenure. Because we have two groups. We have about 20 lifers that are ranging from 8 to 20 plus years on the crew. And then you have, 17 people who are kind of in that apprentice mode of learning from the lifers, learning from Reuben, and then they'll get promoted out to go, get upward mobility in other vineyards under Reuben's empire.
Nice. We've had a lot of comments about the nose of this particular wine and its ability to pair with chocolate, which is fascinating, I find. But then again, given Syrah and given a lot of the notes of Syrah, I think it definitely makes a lot of sense.
That would make my dad very happy to hear. He has this long story about how God, she did, everything, and then on the 7th day, she rested, and on the 8th day, she invented chocolate to pair with Syrah. So
yeah, it's beautiful. Syrah, one of those fascinating grapes, it's a grape that seems to thrive in California, but it can be done in very, I won't say poor ways, but it can be very overripe very quickly. So what's your secret to your Syrah production?
It's everything we've talked about. But really it's having low yield,
Mm.
driving that natural concentration. So we don't have to wait for dehydration. That is so much of what you're talking about, the riper profile of New World Syrah. We're able to get beautiful intensity and coating texture from taut, round, fresh grapes. And it's just, you can't cheat it. Like if you give the vine water all year, then you have to wait for that water to dehydrate. Like there's no way around that. But to use our approach, you have to be at one with never having a bumper crop. So our average yield for Syrah across the vineyard is under 2 years, or sorry, under 2 tons per acre.
Yeah. No, I found that, and Susanna makes a great point, which is that some of the Syrahs that are out there, both in Santa Barbara and heading north, especially here in Paso, can get very saccharine, and part of that is just the over ripeness. I think letting the grapes hang too long, not trying to get it to ripeness, but you're allowing the sugars to produce too much. Maybe not using enough of a canopy. It's an interesting phenomenon.
Yeah, to me, it's stylistic too.
Yeah.
That style continues to a more limited extent get really rewarded in the media, and I get it. They're wow wines, and that the sweeter you get, that the jammier the profile, the better it marries with new oak. But to me, this wine, I would never want to muddle this profile with oak. It doesn't need anything. I want the purity of it. I want the natural complexity, that savory. Again, there's no better word than like, raw carnal bloodiness, roasted meat element below the fruit. That just to me is so captivating about balanced Syrah. You lose all of that once you get overripe,
Right. Yeah.
and you might as well be Cabernet, overripe Cabernet. It's
Yeah, or yeah, even like chaptalized Cabernet, because it's funny, like when I first came up here to Paso Robles, it was Central Coast Syrah that I fell in love with. And I have, over the last few years, completely fallen out of love with it because most of the ones I have are so overripe, and you lose the fresh cracked, black and white pepper notes, you lose the smoky bacon. Like Syrah should be a grape that it's challenging. It's not a quaffable wine. It's a wine that should push back. It should be animalistic. It should have smoke. It should have tar, pepper, all sorts of things. And I think that's what's interesting because, as you mentioned, given the maritime wines or winds that come into your area, I imagine there's a lot of coolness, and combined with that limestone and the high acidity it produces, it's such a unique style of Syrah.
Yeah. I think Michael Larner, our neighbor to the south, coined it the best. Like Ballard Canyon is Goldilocks, where we're cool enough where we're not getting that super baked, jammy profile, um, but we're also warm enough to get yummy ripeness. That some Syrahs go to the reaction to that jammy profile has been uber cool climate, edge of Santa Rita Hills, true Sonoma Coast, and those wines often they're not delicious. They're cool to taste and like wow, they could be Croix Hermitage, but they're I don't want to. I'm not popping a bottle and enjoying it.
No, you want a Grenache, you want a Cote Rôtie of something like that. You want that complexity there. So I have to ask, um, why is it so hard to sell Syrah?
It's not for me.
That's good. That's a good answer.
It's been like the other thing that was happening when I took over in '09 was it was a worldwide Syrah glut.
Mhm.
So when I was working in Australia in '06, that was the edge of the cliff. I think, Parker, all the critics were just lumping on 9,900 points. Grateful Palate was just surging. And then '07 through 2011 were a string of very challenging, low yielding, just miserable vintages in Australia. And then what happened with the worldwide recession that had such a profound effect on my life and career, the Australian currency remained strong, where
Yeah.
our dollar the world was in recession, but Chinese mining propped the Australian dollar up,
Right.
which meant that Yellowtail went bankrupt. Yellowtail could not be $5.99 anymore.
Right.
The real market value, because the Australian dollar was so high, it should have been $14.99. Well, boom, bankrupt, bailout by the Australian national government. So a lot of Shiraz are getting dumped. And at the same point, the Australians had taken it too far. Again, in '06, we were picking everything. Our target sugar rate sampling was 19 Gamay. That
Oh gosh.
exactly
Jesus.
translates to 19 degrees potential alcohol. Um, it wasn't good. It was too jammy. It was too thick. It was too manufactured and manipulated. And first the British said we don't like it anymore. Then the Japanese. Then the Americans. So all of a sudden, all this closeout Shiraz on the market. It wasn't just Australia. A lot of American farmers, were told, "Hey, Shiraz is such a hardy varietal. It'll give you a merchantable crop anywhere in California you plant
Right.
it." And Parker loved it, rah, rah. So we were in a big Syrah boom too, but the broader market was never demanding it. It wasn't market driven. It was supply driven. Like, oh, you can grow Syrah anywhere from the outback of Australia all the way to Cuadrilla. So by the time the recession hit, there was already too much Syrah on the market, and then the recession. Um, so back
Just
then,
takes it.
it was really difficult to sell Syrah. But what happened was everybody ran away from it.
Hmm.
People in Napa were like, "What the hell are we doing?" Grafted Cabernet. People who wanted Syrah as another red for the taste room, oh yeah, forget about it. So really, only the true devotees stuck with it. And I remember being in Texas in like 2015, making a joke like, "Oh, Pete, you don't have any Pinot Noir planted in your vineyard, right?" I said, "Dude, if Dad had planted Pinot Noir, I'd be at home, fat and happy, not riding around in your car in Texas." And they both
Yeah.
looked at me like, "You're kidding, right?" Like, we have 30 Pinot Noir producers. You're our only Syrah producer from California. Your wines are way easier to sell than Pinot. And then especially, like, the problem's not even worse. Pinot Noir is so saturated right now, just as it's been
Right. Yeah.
planted and planted and planted. And there'll have to be a market correction on Pinot Noir too. But, not only did we survive the market correction, but we've spent, every year just getting better at what we do. And it really speaks to Ruben being here since 1990, to continue to optimize. We've been through cool vintages. We've been through heat wave vintages. And same goes with my winemaking team. The evolution in our Syrah winemaking, we make Syrah nothing like we did 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Our 2006, 2007 Syrah that I started out my career selling, barely any resemblance to what we're making today. Back then, we are doing 3 punch downs a day with a fermentation. Now we do 3
Mhm.
punch downs during the entire fermentation. Everything's
Oh my
fermented in
gosh.
concrete, super, super gentle, because we've grown confident in the concentration of our tiny grapes. We don't
Yeah.
need to make red wine the way everybody else makes them. Our grapes are different. And the most profound difference, and this is the link between these two red wines, the OG, it's all free run, right?
Mm.
Any other wine region in the world, you need press wine to get color, to get tannin.
Right.
But for our wines, we like the purity of the free run, and that enables us to give all the pressed wine to the crew.
Interesting. Okay. So it's basically the same grapes. It's just the difference between the free run versus what's pressed off.
The Cuadrilla gets all the pressed wine from the
Oh,
Sangiovese, from the Grenache, and it also gets, pigs that, like, you know, just any declassification from the entire
yeah.
vineyard
Right.
comes into and every year Cuadrilla is delicious, but then we keep the higher end wines pure and precise, and we can be even more draconian with declassification, because we need to fill our deal with the crew is
Right.
that we need to fill up the Cuadrilla pool.
So what's the case count on the two reds?
Well over 10,000 cases on Cuadrilla.
Okay.
I think, like, officially it's like 12,800 cases, and then OG hovers right around 500 cases. Between
Oh
400
wow.
and 600 every year.
Okay. So yeah, that's a lot of pressing off of the obviously there's a lot of declassified fruit and
Yeah.
other vineyards
And
that
then
get
and
left
then
there,
keep in
but yeah.
mind there's a wine in the middle of this. So our
Right.
larger monocepage Syrahs called the estate grown. I wanted to show you a special limited
Oh,
production
yeah, no,
old vines, but the estate grown Syrah averages about 3,800 cases. And then, we make a lot of different red wines.
beautiful. Susanna said she feels like both Pinot Noir and Cabernet Sauvignon are oversaturated, which I agree with. Cab is one of those that, it's tough to challenge because it's still the most widely distributed grape in the world. Pinot, I feel like we have a kind of almost a reverse sideways coming where Merlot had been overplanted and overproduced and was getting sappy, and then sideways came along and kind of smacked it into place, and Pinot took its place. But I feel like Pinot's sort of jumping the same way. So what do you think, Peter?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's all market correction.
Right,
The whole Merlot story that really started in the late 1980s, and sideways kind of like nailed the coffin shut. But the macro wine industry killed Merlot. They planted it all over California in white
right.
in flat, hot areas, overcropped it, and turned out shitty Merlot that nobody liked. And then, okay, the market doesn't drink Merlot. What do we serve the market to next? And for a minute, they actually started to Sangiovese, the Calatal movement, and Merlot or Pinot Noir eventually came along. But the first thing that replaced Merlot was really Cab.
Right. Yeah. Other question, um, interesting question, which I had not thought of, but since Ruben is the OG, how much longer will he be running his group, and does he have his successor to fill his irreplaceable role? Is that, something that you guys have kind of thought out of, is like, what is the future, of a world without Ruben?
Well, number one, Ruben's only 12 years older than me.
Oh,
So
okay.
he's a young 55. He started young. Um, but yeah, I've really heard him talking about it a lot the past 5 years, that his main focus is for the entire crew to have all of his knowledge. And he has a nephew, Diego, that we got through Cal Poly Viticulture. He's now working within the Empire as a manager. He has a son-in-law, Tony, who's a vineyard manager, and his own son, Omar, is a freshman in high school. It's really cute for his 8th grade speech. The gist of it is, I want to be a farmer like my dad.
Wow.
So we have a lot of talent in the generation younger than me coming up. Ruben's irreplaceable, and I don't want to think about that moment, but we will definitely be able to maintain the level that we're operating at now. What will be sad is just the crazy ideas that Ruben comes up with, all the time, and it's really cool for him that he has the full latitude to try any experiments that he dreams up. And we don't, as Ruben will tell you, my dad, Tom, doesn't know about all the experiments that don't work. We don't talk about that. That's how you get
Yeah, I'd
better.
never tell a lawyer about the things that don't work. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, all good.
No, that's amazing. And yeah, I mean, he's such, just hearing you talk about him, and in such a mythical role that you put him in. He's clearly an integral part of the Stolpman story. And it's fantastic that you have done such an amazing job, not only integrating him, keeping him part of the team, but really kind of building from him and creating this environment that honestly should be mirrored by countless wineries. I mean, it's become, in the wine industry, such an issue these days, the labor, not just costs, but just finding the quality labor who can take care of the vineyards. And you guys have from the beginning done it the right way, and it's paid off, it sounds like, in spades.
That's what I'm the most thankful for. This isn't my creation. I was able to take over the existing format where we'd always employed full time, and I was, the proudest part of my career is being able to augment it. But what, in talking to other owners, it's such a, if you haven't always operated like this, It's a almost insurmountable, jump off point of all of a sudden going from, a skeleton crew all year and then bringing in a huge labor contracted crew for pruning and harvest. And right now people are going the opposite direction. Where now, because the market's down, the economy, everybody's mechanizing, and you
Yeah.
can't have a healthy vineyard older than 15 years with mechanization. You kill
Yeah.
your vineyard.
No, you're absolutely right. And you need people who, vines are living things, and you need people who know these vines and not only know the vines, but know the vines every year, for decades on end because they're evolving. You know, the vines are a living being and you're nurturing them. It's basically like taking care of family.
Amen.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, just doing the math. God, Ruben must have been 22, 23 when he started with your dad.
He came over, I think when he was 18 and a half, 19.
Wow.
His two older brothers, Marcos and Enrique, were already here, and they taught him everything that they knew. Ruben, I think I mentioned, is the youngest son of 11. I don't know why I'm holding a pen.
I
The
don't think you
eldest,
mentioned that, so that's shocking. The
yeah,
youngest of the youngest of 11.
the
That's amazing.
brothers number 5 and 7 were already here working in vineyards, and they're the ones who told Ruben, like, come, like, we have great work here working in the vines. They taught him everything. But because Ruben was the baby of the family, the oldest brother, Jose, who was 25 years older than Ruben, was
Oh,
the village school teacher. And so Ruben being the baby, the spoiled baby, Jose made darn sure as his teacher that he got good grades, that he learned English. So he came over the border armed with good English and then with two mentor brothers to teach him everything. So that was this big, kind of twofold head start into this life,
yeah.
into this career.
But it also says something about your father to give that much responsibility to someone who was that young and just really starting out on his career and kind of handing over the reins to him. And,
Yeah,
not only,
my dad already loved Marcos, and Marcos is the one that came to my dad and said, "Hey, I'm going to move to Happy Canyon." And my dad was like, "What?" He's like, "No, you need to hire my baby brother. He's smarter than me, better looking than me. He speaks better English. So I'm going to get out of his way. He's going to be your vineyard manager. I'm moving to Happy Canyon. By the way, you need to sponsor him to get a green card," because Marcos knew my dad would step up and
yeah,
do it, because Marcos and Enrique had gotten to California during amnestia under Reagan. So
mhm,
they had green
right.
cards. So Marcos, my dad again loved Marcos, and Marcos basically said, "Please get Ruben. Ruben is going to be your vineyard manager, but you need to get him a green card." And so it took 4 years. So if you look at our website, Ruben became our vineyard manager in 1994 when he got his green card.
Nice. So where are Marcos and Esteban these days? Or Enrique?
Marcos is still in Happy Canyon with Ruben's brother-in-law Juve. Maria is the second youngest out of 10. So the youngest Margot married Juve. So Marcos and Juve are the lieutenants in Happy Canyon,
Okay.
and then Enrique is in Santa Rita Hills. So they're spread out throughout the empire.
Right. But they stayed in the region. That's fantastic.
Oh, we all work together.
That's amazing. Very cool. So we're a little over time. We're quite a bit over time, but thank you so much for your time. And
Just peeked on me. Like, I can hear that the kids are in bed now. She's like, "What's going on? Are you reciting a novel in there?"
this tends to happen with our conversations as we get so involved in them. We tend to go a little long, but most importantly, if folks want to come up and visit Stolpman, want to meet up with you or taste your wines, visit the property, how can they do that? Do they need appointments? What can they do?
Yeah, so we're open 7 days a week in Los Livos. My team there is amazing. Ruben's niece Lisa's there. A couple of former interns, a couple advanced sommeliers. You're gonna be well taken care of. If you're coming up on a weekend, definitely book a reservation. It's really easy. We have the talk reservation system. Unfortunately, we have to keep the vineyard private.
Sure.
So kind of the gatekeeper there is our own wine club. But the caveat there is you cannot trade wine clubs. You have to stay with Chris and Allison. You can only add my wine club. You can't.
Well, Yes, the beauty of our wine club is, you can join it and you don't have to take every shipment. You can take the shipments when you want. It's a very casual wine club, but I
Yeah,
appreciate
but
it. Thank you.
I love it. Yeah, we're a little more regimented. We do 2 releases a year,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm leading a vineyard hike Sunday morning at 9 o'clock,
Nice.
which will be the coolest vineyard hike of the year. And you can just email us and let the team know that you're on the Zoom and Pete invited you, and we'll get you all set up in directions that we do hikes like 6 or 7 times a year. Unfortunately, though, even for a hike, we can't have it open to the public on the website. So
Sure.
unfortunately, everything has to like stay within that closeted wine club, and then we have taco pickup parties and everything else. So
Nice. So yes, join the Stolpman Wine Club and get to, trace around the Stolpman Vineyards like you own the place, because in a sense you kind of do, although you're below the crew in terms of true ownership. Nice. If you don't mind, can we unmute everybody? Do you have a couple of minutes to stick around?
yeah,
Or yeah, perfect.
I'm
So
pour myself another glass of Cuadrilla.
there you go. Perfect. And if Jess wants to join us, absolutely. If the kids are in bed, she's more than welcome to. I know she's part of the family and part of the team as well. So, but yeah, if you've got any questions for Peter, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. Thank you so much for being here, by the way. We greatly appreciate it. I will point out before you finish the muting, next month, we've got a fantastic winery that has been at both of the Festival of Forgotten Grapes Sangiovese vineyards. They are all Italian. We're going to have some really fascinating Italian varietals. Falangina. We're going to have beautiful Ruche, some really interesting wines. So keep an eye out for that email next week, which will be coming out. But in the meantime, yeah, if anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask Peter some questions, go right ahead. Roger, it looks like you're first.
Well, I don't really have a question. It was just a wonderful conversation, kind of one-sided. We were doing all the listening, and we'll see Peter's wine tasting room in a few weeks when we head up to the Central Coast and maybe get some more wine. We really enjoyed, got through a bottle of the Syrah. It was just awesome with the steak and then the little bit of chocolate that someone suggested. So we really want to thank Peter for this great experience.
Thank you.
So my question here, first off, thank you. This has been a wonderful, very open, honest experience. I really enjoy these virtual wine tastings because you get to meet owners from vineyards and people who are intimately involved in it. Do you remember who the Uchi beverage director was in 2016 who you worked with, or is that just so long ago that it's just lost to time and
The
space?
beautiful thing, it's Jason, and hold on, I'm on my computer, so it's on my fingertips, right?
I just happen to know a lot of wine people in Houston. That's what it is.
So he was out of Austin,
Okay.
and his name is Jason Cosmas.
Using Cosmos does not ring a bell.
K-O-S-M-A-S, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, so he'd be with high hospitality and everything.
Sentinel.
So,
Yep, yep. And
yeah.
now I had to catch up to them because like they'd been open in West Hollywood for a year maybe, and they're like, dude, you're in our backyard now. We need to have Uchi by the glass there too. So now we're in all locations. They're in Miami, Scottsdale, and they're opening in Philadelphia apparently.
It as someone who was in Houston for 15 years when they moved there, like it's amazing to see them grow and blossom and everything. Like, and it's a restaurant that I've gone to for a lot of special events. So it's really fun that you have this relationship with them that I had no idea about.
Yeah, the only location I've been to was the Houston one.
The
So
old Felix Mexican restaurant. It's an historic building for
yeah.
anyone who's
What's that
interested.
neighborhood called? I love that neighborhood of Houston.
Montrose.
There you go,
Oh,
Montrose.
Yeah.
All right, next
It's
time I'm in
awesome.
Houston, I'm stopping
Yeah.
by Uchi.
So many good foods, so many good bars. Anvil, which is a James Beard award-winning bar, is there.
I've been there too.
Ugo's. Ugo's is there, and Ugo Ortega has a similar story to, the guys who work at your vineyard came over and like he's now doing amazing things. So
Yeah. And I should
So-
mention, you mentioned Rajpar earlier. He has it's the Par Collective is what he calls it. He has a few brands. Phelan Farms is his primary one, but they bought the Stolo Vineyard down in Cambria and have do tastings out of there. So if you're interested in tasting some of the Rajpar wines, again, if you're far from Stolpman, you've done Stolpman, you're coming up the coast, stopping in Cambria, it's definitely one worth checking out. He does some fascinating grapes. He's bought some vineyards kind of north of, or excuse me, I should say further east of Stolo, but in very cool environments, and is doing grapes like Mondouse and Trousseau and a lot of these very cool weather grapes to grow in that area.
So can I ask a question?
Sure, Sandy, go ahead.
Okay, so we're going to be in Los Olivos on September 30th.
Los Olivos.
So I'm hoping to visit Stolpman. And what I want to know is, do we need to make a reservation?
I think it would be best. It's always best if you're going to visit a tasting room to make a reservation if you can approximate the time you're going to be there, just in case they get busy. So you have a seat designated for you. So I would absolutely do that.
Well, thank you. I wasn't clear on that.
Yeah, I just looked at the calendar and it's a Tuesday, so we'll have plenty of room for you, but it is helpful that, for our staffing to
No
make sure.
problem, and thank you.
We'll see
And
you
you're
on.
right. Yeah, you're right across from another winery that's been featured here in the Forgotten Grapes Wine Club, Tercero Cellars.
Oh, yeah.
So
I'm
I
sure
don't think-
you're here till midnight with Larry.
Larry loves to talk, and he also loves to serve his Roussanne unchilled. He recommends that everybody serve it at room temperature, so you get the full aromatics, which is why I found all of your talk about Roussanne fascinating. I was like pinging back to my my Tercero talk with Larry. Yes.
Oh.
Beautiful.
And Peter.
Okay, well, I will.
Go ahead, Doug.
For those that aren't familiar with Los Olivos, thank you very much. I've been to your tasting room several times. A good friend of ours is a member, for having your own personal little outhouses there. Because
They are
Los
quite
Olivos is
classy.
not known
They're
for
quite classy.
restrooms.
They're VIP. They have running water. They're full on bathrooms. So yeah, Los Olivos quite infamously does not have a sewer system. So we need to have those VIP systems with their own septic. There is talk finally of them running a line from Solvang. So one day within the next couple of years, we're gonna have a real bathroom for you.
Okay, that's good. And also, we've enjoyed your wines several times, and one of your higher end ones, the Angelica.
Anjali, yeah.
Anjali, okay. Anjali, that's very, very tasty. We had some a couple of nights ago.
Yeah, it's a beautiful wine. So Anjali is my mother's family name from Lucca, Italy. So Dad wanted to name at the time our best wine after my mom. What a gentleman.
Yeah, no, it's good. Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you.
Peter, I usually ask this, I forgot. Do you have anything interesting coming up the pike, or are you guys kind of set in your ways? We didn't really even talk about you guys growing Sangiovese, but do you have anything new, any new blends or new varietals you're working with?
I think the most exciting thing for the first time this year, we released a Sauvignon.
Oh,
Sauvignon from Jura. It's a confounding white wine. It's super high acid, tiny cluster, smaller than any red wine bunch we have on the vineyard. So deceivingly concentrated and rich, yet searing acidity. We've never bought a light char white wine puncheon, but we bought that barrel. We use New Oak on white wine, not on red. That wine I'm really, really excited for. It's been a struggle. We started propagating it from 3 different cuttings. back in 2016, and we made our first 49 cases from 2023. So very, very expensive for us to propagate and to farm because the yield is so low. But it's funny. I wasn't desiring another high-end white wine, but we got it.
Yeah. Are you oxidizing it like they do in Jura, or are you, kind of okay?
But there is like a weird subtle oxidized note like behind like the fresh lemon. It's a crazy one.
Cherry hint kind of thing.
Yeah, just a hint though. We're not oxidizing at all. It is a topped off puncheon, but still you get that little hint of it.
Beautiful. Awesome. Any other questions for Peter?
Just wanted to say thank you. Like, your wines are delicious. We've had them, and our friends Matt and Rigo, they're wine club members. They're missing tonight. They have a work event, and they wanted just to say thank you and love your wines, and fantastic. Yeah. Sorry, and I did have one question, because so you went to Georgetown to go study what, fill in the blank, and then what was your intended plan when you kind of got like sucked back into the family? Like,
yeah, I mean, like any kid. Well, the reason I ended up at Georgetown, I went to Loyola High in LA, and
our friend is the AD there. What year were you?
OO from Loyola High. And
Okay.
so if you get into Georgetown from Loyola, you go to Georgetown. Like big you go to Stanford. Georgetown.
Modern day rules.
Jesus Christ, Orange County. Okay, we get it. You're Princeton.
Yep.
But I studied international business marketing and with an English minor. And, I just wanted to find something I was passionate about in the business world. Hadn't found it yet. Wine was always in the background, but my dad had done a very good job of not pushing me. Like, you're never going to make money in wine. It's my passion. And so wine was always like, okay, like I'm going to have my career, number one, like my dad did. And then when he was starting to retire, I could take over as a side project as well. So the job I took in LA was like a management candidacy job where you jump in with a ton of responsibility and, with people, responding or, a true management role very quickly. And everybody lasts there 2 or 3 years, then got burnt out and went to go get like a top 10 MBA. And I quickly realized that I had no interest in staying there longer than 2 or 3 years, but I didn't want an MBA either. And again, every Tuesday night, the drama at the dinner table is unfolding where I felt compelled to like, I need to jump in and right the ship and make this company economically sustainable. And so I had a very short-lived stint in corporate America.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. Did you play sports at Loyola?
I played soccer and ran hurdles, and then at Georgetown, I was in the 8-man crew team.
Oh gosh.
Very cool. That's awesome.
Oh gosh, I was up at Lake Carnegie quite often, Chris. I know.
I had plenty of crew friends, and I would not wish an erg machine on anyone.
Well, what happened was my dad, I told the story of him working his way through college with valet car parking. So my dad was really clear, I'm going to pay for college. I want you to study. I want you to get the most out of your college experience. I want you to study abroad. But I'll never forget, we were walking through the Georgetown campus. It's like diagonal all the way through campus. We're heading up to the bookstore. And he was all right. And I'd had a checkered, junior high through high school, got myself in a bit of trouble here and there too, why I went to Loyola, not, anywho. And so he said, all right, Pete, I'm paying for tuition, but what are you going to do to keep yourself out of trouble? I said, oh yeah, Dad, I was, I've been thinking about that. I'm going to join the rugby team. And he like spun me around and said, I'm not an idiot. You and I both know that's a drinking club. That's going to get you in more trouble. And right then, this little guy jumped in front of us and says, you're going to be my number 4-man, boathouse, 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. I had no idea what he was talking about. My dad had some idea, and he goes, yeah, you're doing that. He'll be there. And that's how I wound up.
At what point did they spring morning workouts on you?
Tom, that was my freshman year coach. He was smart. freshman year was all afternoons, and then
Mm.
I knew I was gonna, because I knew I was gonna go abroad junior year. So I lasted all of sophomore year, and then at the end of that, I didn't stay on for the summer for Henleys or anything. I'm like, okay, my 2-year crew career has come to an end.
Yes, there's you get the
But
cred no matter what.
our
Yeah,
freshman
I,
Mornings are
I,
tough,
I,
but
I
the
bow
water
down
is
to you
sweeter.
for doing crew. That elevates you. Like,
It-
I played football and lacrosse at Princeton, but crew is a whole different dynamic.
Damn, boy. Both my kids are playing lacrosse, so one day hopefully they'll be Ivy League material.
Very nice. I don't know. At this point, like, you're better off going to Carolina or Duke or Virginia or Syracuse.
We
it
don't
seems like.
we don't talk about Duke. Come on,
That's
especially
fair.
talking about,
Fair. You're right. You're right.
my
Yeah,
boys who are in Duke lacrosse. I mean, too soon.
No, I mean, they were ultimately proven, to be unfounded.
On that
quality.
note,
Right, exactly. Actually, yes, on that note, we should probably cut this short. Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you, Peter, so much. This was an amazing conversation. I think everybody learned a lot. Your wines are fantastic. I suspect you'll see a lot of reorders coming up in the next couple of days. And obviously, we've already got some folks who are going to come up and visit and take place or, enjoy. And we'll have them mention that they're part of the Forgotten Grapes Wine Club when they come up there. But everybody, keep an eye out for the email next week for the San Ricci wines for October. And we will see you then. Have a good night. Take care, everybody. Thanks
thank you,
again.
everybody.
Good night,
Thank you so
everybody.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.